In this video, I will explain how to calculate the internal rate of return. So here's the definition. The internal rate of return, or IRR for short, is the discount rate that makes the net present value equal to zero. So to understand the internal rate of return, you really need to understand net present value first. And I'll link to another video that I have on how to calculate net present value in detail. Now, sometimes the IRR is also called the break-even point, because it's the point where the initial investment is equal to the present value of cash flow that the investment is expected to generate. So the easiest way to understand how to calculate IRR is with an example. So let's check out this example. It says, calculate the IRR for a project with the following cash flows. So here's some project where in year zero, or in other words, to get this project off the ground, we have to invest $50,000. Now, in year one, we project that it will make $15,000. In year two, we also think it will make $15,000. In year three, it will make $15,900. And in year four, this project is expected to make $16,000. So to calculate the internal rate of return for this project, we have to find what is the discount rate that makes the net present value of this project equal to zero. So here's the formula for net present value. We say that the net present value is equal to the sum of the present value of the cash flows in each year minus the initial investment. So, for example, in year one, we said we think we're going to make $15,000. That's 1 year from now. So the present value of that $15,000, the present value formula is calculated as the future value divided by 1 plus r to the power of t, where r is the annual interest rate and t is the number of years. So in year one, this $15,000, the present value of that $15,000 would be calculated as 15,000 divided by 1 plus r to the power of 1, because 1 is equal to t, the number of years. So we're in year one. And then we repeat that process for each year. So year two, we said we're also going to make $15,000. But what is the present value of that $15,000 2 years from now? Well, we just do 15,000 divided by 1 plus r to the power of 2 this time. And then we repeat the process for year three and year four. And then we subtract the initial investment of $50,000. And we're setting that equal to zero. So we're saying, what is the value of r that we can plug in for all of these r's that would actually make this net present value equal to zero? So historically, this process of finding this value for r has been done just through trial and error. But nowadays, you can use Excel or some other similar software to calculate the IRR very easily. But for this video, I'll show you how to use the trial and error method. So the first step is just pick a value for r. So this is a guess and check method. A nice place to start for r is usually around 10%. So let's say that we try to plug in a value of 10% for r, or in other words, r is equal to 0.10. If we plug that in for this formula, here's what we get. So if we plug in a 0.10, or in other words, 10% for r, and we perform this calculation, if we punch that into a calculator, we end up with negative $1,092. So remember, we're looking for the value of r that makes this net present value equal to zero. So we can see when we chose a value of 10%, or 0.10 as a decimal, the net present value was a negative number. So what that means is that the true IRR, or the value for r that we're going to plug in, must be less than 10%. So let's say that we want to try 8% now. So if we plug in 8%, or 0.08 for r, and we carry out these calculations, we end up with a net present value of $1,131. So now the net present value is greater than zero. So what that means is we need to bump up the interest rate. So instead of 8%, now let's try 9%. So let's go back up. And if we plug in a value of 0.09, so 9% for the rate, we do end up with a net present value of zero. So we would say that the internal rate of return for this project is 9%. Now, once we've actually figured out that number, it's really up to the firm or the investment group to decide, is this 9% high enough to warrant an investment? So that's up to an individual firm to decide if this number is high enough or not. But that was just a quick example of how to calculate IRR using a trial and error method.